also from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in a boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him, and then a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. And there they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So last week we started on a journey. Seems fitting that we would continue that journey this week. Last week we started to talk about what justice and equality look like. The knowledge of eating the fruit of good and evil, and how we as humankind are insecure, and that our insecurities are insurmountable at times. And I shared that this comes from a place of insecurity that we've created, and in that insecurity we have created an unjust society, one that is filled with fear of the unknown. Filled with fear of the unknown. Just as the passengers with Jesus were on a ship in a storm, they had fear and they had doubt. And this week we saw the truth that has been and is what is a part of our lives. A truth that we try so very hard to sweep under the carpet. A truth that tells us lies. But the truth is, 9 innocent people were killed this week. 9. They aren't my friends. I do not know them. But they've impacted me. And I hope they've impacted you. Because this is wrong. We live in a world in which 9 innocent people sitting in a church having a Bible study are murdered. Why are they murdered? Why? Because of the color of their skin. This is not a just society. This is not what God had planned for us. And so I want to say out loud, Black Lives Matter. They matter. We have tried to sweep under the carpet the injustice that we see around us. We pretend like we sit in our church and that we are all good. We are good people. We are. And that we live in a life in which we invite people in and we say to them, "We love you." But here's the thing. We may say this, but I'm afraid that we don't do this. I'm afraid that we say a lot of things that we don't actually do. And so I started to think about these scriptures and what they really mean to me and what they really mean to you, and how what is happening in our world, what happened in Charleston, what happened in Ferguson, what's happening in Baltimore, that this is our reality too. What's happening in Oakland, what's happening in Richmond, this is our reality too. And so I think it's time for the church to talk about it. And it's hard to talk about it. See, I personally would rather not talk about things that make me emotional. I'd rather not. I'd rather not give a sermon in which I want to cry because I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm upset. But if I don't preach up here and share with you God's message of love, then I'm not a very good preacher. And I've not done Jesus' justice in our community. And so I want to talk a little bit about what this looks like and what it's like. And I'm going to share from an experience of when I was a small child. And some of you have heard this story and some have not. Growing up, I grew up in your basic lower middle class neighborhood. Was predominantly Anglo. We had lots of Latinos in my neighborhood. We had a lot of Asians in my neighborhood. And we had, very few African Americans in my neighborhood. And I remember it was 5th grade, and I was that person whose job it was to make friends with the new students. It was a job because that's just the teacher said, we need people to make friends with new students. And I was like, I'll make friends with the new students. And I'm sure all of you can imagine that I'd be like the first one, like, hi, come and be my friend. And so there was a new student in my class, and her name was Latifah. And Latifah and I became very good friends very, very quickly. I loved Latifah. We had so much fun. And so I invited Latifah over to my house for a play date. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, can you come over? And then I said, oh, and bring a swimming suit. Go swimming. And as the time got closer and closer, these were the questions that Latifah would ask me. Are you sure it's okay that I come over to your house? I'm like, yeah, no, I asked my mom. It's totally okay. The next day, are you really okay? Are you sure it's okay that I come over for a play date to your house? I'm like, yeah, I totally asked my mom. Of course it's okay. And finally, the day before she's coming over, she finally said what she really meant, which I really never understood. And she says, does your mother know I'm black? Oh my gosh, I didn't know it mattered. I didn't know that it would actually matter that I had to tell my mother that my friend was African American. I didn't know I had to tell my mother. And quite frankly, I know my mother. And so I looked at my new friend and I said, my mother doesn't care if you're white, black, purple, orange, plaid. My mother doesn't care. Because that's the home I grew up in. My mother doesn't care. I don't have to tell her that. And she said, are you sure? I said, no, I know, and I'm sure. You can come over and you can swim in my pool and you can be my friend and play and have dinner, and it's okay. And that was the first time I understood what it meant to be in a community in which there's racism. I had no idea. I'd never even experienced it. And that was my very first moment, and it was very awakening. And it was from that point on that I started to realize what a privileged life I led. What a privileged life I led because I was white. I was white. And not only am I white, I'm like super white. Like, you don't get much whiter than me. And I started to find that as I grew up and I grew older, I started to see, wow, things come easy. They do. They come easy. I don't have to work as hard. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And I don't know how many people in this room have ever acknowledged how easy it is for them. Because being white automatically moves you up. It just does. I didn't have to worry about going on job interviews. I didn't have to worry about getting profiled and pulled over in my car. I didn't have to worry about going on dates with anybody in particular. I didn't have to worry about any of those things. And when I figured that out, I was shocked. I was shocked. Because you know what? That's not fair. And that's not equality. That I figured this out. I learned 20 some odd years ago when I moved to San Jose that I would never get a ticket in this town. I was never going to get pulled over because every car that I saw pulled over had someone of color in it. Whether they were Hispanic, they were black, or any other race, they were not white. They were not white in the city of San Jose being pulled over 20 some odd years ago. I don't know that it's changed, quite frankly. I don't know that it's changed. And so I stand up here today to talk about this. I stand up here because it's important, because we seem to put our blinders on and go, well, it's not happening in my neighborhood. This is not happening to me. No, it's not. It's not happening to me, but it's happening to people that I care about. It's happening to people I don't have to know, but I care about them. It's happening to people in our life. It is happening. And so I look at this and I think about the people in this room and the stories that they could tell about what this looks like, what racism looks like, because it has a color and it shouldn't, but it does. And so we as Christians, we grapple with this. We grapple in this, and we think about Mark in the book of Mark, and there's a storm, and these people are in a boat, and they are struck in terror. They are struck with fear. Fear. And when you have fear, you become stuck. You cannot move when you live in fear. You are stuck. But this isn't what Jesus asks us to be, is stuck. Jesus doesn't ask us to be stuck. Jesus doesn't ask us to be stuck in our insecurities. Jesus calls us out. I mean, think about it. At this particular point in time in the Bible, Jesus has done the following things. He has healed a leper. He has taken a demon and pulled it out of another human being. He has done all these things, and people are now talking about him because Jesus was a radical. He did things that nobody really wanted to be going on. And what did they say? They said he's crazy, and they said that he was filled with demons, that he was Satan himself, right there. That's what they said. Because he was a rebel. Jesus knew that the only way to get something to happen was to be on the outside and making it move. And so the first thing I need you guys to do is, how many people brought their cell phones with them to church today? If you brought your cell phone, get it out. Hey, Ted, I want the slide up with the Confederate flag on it. That's the one. Okay, so the first thing I need you to do is go to moveon.org on your cell phone. I know this might take you a few minutes, but I need you to find this. Moveon.org, and I'm going to ask you, I can't make you do it, but I'm going to ask you to sign this petition. There is a petition going around to ask that the Confederate flag be taken down out of the county buildings in South Carolina. Really, if it's anywhere else, I'd like to find a petition for all of those places as well. Because a Confederate flag has no business being up in a public space anywhere. And so I ask you please to take that moment, to get on your phones and to take a moment to vote to take this down. Because what that says when that is flying high over a public space, what that says to me, what that says to someone of any color is, what you're saying to me is, I am not important enough because you went to a war and you still believe in the beliefs you had before that. You still hold those same beliefs. If you are still flying that flag, you still hold on to those same beliefs, and that is not okay. This is the United States of America. We are supposed to be free, and we're supposed to be equal. That's one of the things we stand for, and that flag does not say that. So that's the first thing I need you guys to do. And the next thing I need you guys to do is I need you guys to start learning how to become radical. I need all of us to learn how to be radical. Because if we're not going to be radical, then we don't have much of a purpose. You see, I think that we need to be called out. We need to be out in the streets, and we need people to know who we are, because that's what you do. I want people to go, wow, those people are so radical. That church, they must be crazy. They must be crazy. Just like Jesus, they must be crazy. And so this is what it looks like. We can come to church, and we can have an air conditioner that's working and not working, and we can sit in pews, and we can be really, really comfortable. And that is awesome on Sunday mornings. But the difference that we need to do is that we need to get out of the comfy pews, and we need to get out on the streets, and we need to make a difference. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, this is what I want to see us do, and I'm not sure which one of you or how many of you or if all of you are willing to follow me to do this. I want to make some banners, and I want to get out on the street corners, and I want to show signs that say, Black Lives Matter, right here in South San Jose. Right here, on that street, on those corners. I want us to stand out there and say, this is important. And we're not going to sit in comfy pews. We're actually going to stand up for what we believe. Not sit in here and talk about what justice looks like. Because it's easy. It's really comfortable, isn't it? The air conditioner is working, seats are padded, and I can tell you all about what injustice looks like. I can tell you all about how justice should be. But really, the truth is, if you're not doing it, it doesn't matter what I tell you. It doesn't matter. And I want our church should be the church that's out there, that people are like, whoa, who are those crazy people out on the street? Who are they? And then I want you to look at them, and I want you to have an opportunity to talk to people and say, come and see. Come and see. We're the church. We're the church that believes, and now I'm going to make Ted, he's working so hard for me, and I'm sorry, who believes our belief statement. No, go backwards, Ted, but thank you. You're going 1, 2, and one more. That one. We are a faith community that believes God loves all creation unconditionally. We seek to live in that love, welcoming all. If we say and we mean that, then that means we need to not just say it and mean it in this building. We need to say it and we need to mean it and we need to do it outside of this building. So that when people drive by and say, who are those crazy people out there? We can say, yeah, because we stand for Jesus. Jesus did not sit in a room and preach. Jesus went out in the streets. Jesus went out on the mountains. Jesus had followers following him everywhere. And that is what it means to be a Christian. Somehow or another, we have changed that meaning to be sitting in a nice room, having communion, and listening to amazing music. But the truth is, that's not who we're called to be. That's not action. Jesus was a man of action. God is looking for us to change the world. To change the world. And it starts here, and then it moves there. That is what justice looks like. Justice must be an action. It's an action, not a discussion, not a noun. Justice is an action. And that's who we are. That's what Jesus called us to be. God came to this earth to make justice happen because it wasn't happening without him. And he came to this earth as Christ, as a human, to teach what justice looked like. Because we are supposed to be humble. And we're supposed to be caring, and we're supposed to be loving. And the fact of the matter is, we are made in the image of God, and the image of God are those things. Not the color of our skin, not our race, not our culture. That's not it. We are made in the image of God. And we need to take action. And it is through grace that that action happens. It is through grace. And if you're struggling right now, and if you're sitting in this room right now and you're struggling with racism in your heart, know that the first part of change is acknowledging it. The first part of change is acknowledging it. And that is where you start. Because if you don't acknowledge that you have racism in your own heart, in your own life, you cannot change it. You have to acknowledge it. But by the grace of God go I. We're going to sing Amazing Grace in a moment. The song was written by John Newton. Many of you may know his story. He grew up in England back in the 1700s, and he grew up without any particular religious convictions. He was in the military, and he basically served in the Navy, and then the next thing he knew was he was serving on slave trade ships. And when he started this out, he didn't really care. He didn't see that what he was doing was wrong. He didn't see that this was not what God had called out to being. He was also in a ship at one point in time in a violent storm, a very, very violent storm, one like the story we just heard from our reading of Mark 4. And he called out to God and asked for mercy. He asked for mercy. And in the process of being granted this mercy, living through this storm and coming into a port, he began to write the song Amazing Grace. Because his life had been changed, and he realized that there were going to need to be changes in his own life. It didn't happen overnight. It took him many years. It took him about 5 years before he really changed and realized the social injustice that was happening around him. But he changed, which is why I'm telling you, first you have to acknowledge it, and then change will happen. But you have to know it's there first. And so I'd like us to sing together Amazing Grace this morning.